Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel and the F1 predictions for Spa, which is super exciting because this is always a beautiful track in my opinion, and apparently these predictions have been hotly anticipated. People on TikTok being like, girl, where's the prediction? So I had a really fun time recently because I went to Italy. I went to Maranello, which is obviously where Ferrari factory is, and did a couple of predictions there outside the Ferrari museum and the factory, which was super cool. And I felt I was very inspired by being in that energy. And I also thought, like, you know, let me just bless the bless the Ferrari gang a little bit. And I was with my friend who lives in Milan and she speaks Italian, so she was guiding me around, and she's a big Kimi Antonelli fan, so it was really fun to be also in his hometown because Bologna is where Kimi's from, and I also went to San Marino, so I was unintentionally stalking the boy, didn't mean to, but I thought it was really fascinating being in that environment. So obviously for Silverstone I was there live and I had predicted the Ferrari double podium, which came true. It was the only time in the past couple of months I've actually liked Charles Leclerc's chart, and of course he wins, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have in fact found a little link that I will do another video about because I want to sort of prove this data correlation. Charles seems to win whenever Venus is trining or sextiling his natal Uranus. Every single time. I've tracked it to all his wins. I'm like, always seems to be the time that Venus is doing something with Uranus for him. So I really liked his chart. For this week, I'm back to hating it again. I really freaking hate this chart. Watch him win now. It looks really reckless. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets caught up in a crash with somebody. He's doing way too much. I do not like this. So first thing I don't like, Mars opposite Mars. Mars rules mechanical parts, it's anger, it's aggression. It rules his chart as well, it's his chart ruler. Now, there's a few things I don't like. Also, sorry if I'm looking down because I have like the chart in front of me here. It's like direct rivalry. It's like wheel to wheel, absolutely. It is very much almost fighting somebody that they just don't need to fight. You know, like he and Lewis often tussle a little bit. It's like, why are you fighting your teammate instead of trying to win? It feels like that a little bit. It's hyper aggressive. So it feels like when you're trying to overtake, it's very dangerous, blocking, refusal to let someone past. And so that causes a lot of high risk maneuvers. I think it's also this major desire to be a winner, to dominate, because of course he's going to be on a high because he won last week. So he's going to be like, yeah, you know, I'm on it. And it's like, okay, but are we doing too much, beloved? So I think the primary goal for him becomes beating whoever he's next to rather than even winning, because I think it's kind of internal. It's like, I'm gonna, you know, I've got a point to prove, and then someone else has run away with it and we don't even care about it. So he's getting too caught up in sort of internal conflict because he's trying to prove a point. So what if I was his astrologer and his strategist, I would be saying three things, which is that you absolutely need clear communication with this type of transit. He needs to manage the pace. He really needs to manage the pace and the tyres here, because when you are very aggressive, there is going to be a lot more burning through the tyres and there's going to be more degradation. And I think for him, the car performance will drop because he will not be focused on it. He'll be focused on trying to beat whoever he's near. And it just becomes very diluted and a bit sort of like, focus on the race, please. And so I think he needs to channel that focus into, you know, the actual winning rather than trying to outbreak a rival, basically. So I don't like Mars opposite Mars for that one. The next thing that is, it's not bad. It brings heightened instincts, is that we have the transit moon in Virgo conjunct his natal north node in Virgo in the 11th house. And so this is going to bring a very unfamiliar energy. It's very focused on like physical reflexes and, like I said, very like reactive. He's super reactive in this race. It's like, I just feel like I'm fighting all the time. And because of that Virgo precision, it can be over analytical. So it's kind of like you're picking at small things. You're trying to focus on small things, will to will competition, rather than actually trying to win the race. So he's getting caught up on things that don't really matter here. Also, I think he needs to pay very close attention to things like the actual handling of the car, and of course those freaking brakes, because Mars is definitely brakes. So we really need to be checking the brakes with this one. So that's another thing that brings analytical energy, but it's not analytical in the way that I'd be like, yeah, this is amazing, you're being super precise. It's like, you know, you want to find it from afar and there's absolutely no reason for it. The next thing is the transit sun is squaring its natal moon. The races where he's crashed or I've not liked has been when something is exactly squaring his moon at 25 degrees. If this actually is a crash or something that is like quite, conflictual, I think we really need to start looking at that natal moon because it's doing something, isn't it? And I think the natal moon in Lewis's chart, for example, seems to bring victory. Here with a square to Charles, I think it's just causing more problems. So this one can bring, again, ego is being tested. Again, you won the last race, so you're on a bit of a high. You're like, you know what, you can't get me down, and so you're fighting a little bit more, which is absolutely understandable. So the ego gets tested a little bit. Reflexes are very high. This square is very impulsive. You've got two luminaries, the ego and the emotions being squared. What's that going to do? I think I'm Billy Big Bollocks and I can do this. No, you can't, beloved, right? So this is what I would be saying. It really demands action, so he needs to take that action. But there's also a lot of aggressive driving here, prone to making mistakes, and just this itchy feeling emotionally for him. Again, his moon's in Aries, so when that's squaring the sun in Cancer, you've got these two cardinal signs. Cancer is very delayed, it's very slow, so it's not something that you really want to be pushing a lot of energy on. So the pressure is really ramping up on that regard. And also remember that Mercury's retrograde in Cancer as well. So that's going to be in his ninth house of travel. And it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. And I want to also point this out for both Charles and Lewis, that the Mercury retrograde in the ninth house is not the worst thing in the world. We see, for example, someone like Jude Bellingham, who has that Mercury retrograde conjunct his sun and moon, and he's been really victorious. Jupiter being in Leo because he has a Leo return right now, a Jupiter return. So it's not always the worst thing in the world, but it's something to be mindful of because it is delay. Girl who got delayed 4 hours on a plane because Mercury retrograde, right? So it is a thing. The next thing is that the transit Jupiter in Leo is opposite the natal Uranus. This is the thing where I'm like the cherry on the top of why I think might be aggressive driving, resulting in some volatility. And I don't want to say a crash because I think that can be it's very hard to predict a crash. And I also don't want to put that negativity out there for him, of course. But I do think it's just aggressive and it's very unexpected. For example, Kimi Antonelli in Silverstone had that moon transit on top of his natal Uranus, causing the sort of problem with his car. So this causes unpredictable shifts, a sort of restlessness and aggression at times. Again, doing a bit too much. Jupiter is excess. You're doing too much and it's unexpected. If you take the corner just a bit too much, you're going to go out, right? So it's a sudden sort of rapid escalation, I think. Reckless behavior, absolutely, with Jupiter there. Overconfidence, again, Billy Big Bollocks over here. And feeling this intense urge to sort of escape things. So I'm looking at the chart right now, and I think this is probably more of an accident than anything. But it's a very high risk race for him, I'm not going to lie. Honestly, if I was an astrologer or spiritual advisor, I would be like, calm the fuck down, you know what I mean? So I really think this is going a bit too big and too hard. Do I like this chart? Hell the fuck no. Sorry, I don't like this at all. It's just, no, not for me. Yeah, it can be like a sudden unconventional racing strategy, but with everything else going on, I'm not sure about that one. So, Charles to win? No, I don't think so. So the next person is Lewis Hamilton, and I think a lot of people that are watching me are waiting for the Lewis predictions, and I really enjoy doing them. Big fan of Lewis. Now, one thing I've been tracking with Lewis is basically his natal moon. Whenever he has things going over that natal moon, he seems to do rather well. If you noticed, he always seems to win Silverstone, and that's not, in my opinion, because he's English and he knows the track well. It's because the sun is always going to be so close to his natal moon. So he's always going to have some luminary or harmony blessing his natal moon in that ninth house. Now, we have something really amazing happening for the specific Spa race, which is that we have 17-degree Mercury. It is retrograde, but it's Mercury, conjunct 17-degree natal moon in the ninth house, the exact conjunction we had in Barcelona when Lewis won. Now, I really want to do less like he's going to win because of this, and do more if he does win. This transit is something to keep an eye on for him. It's proving a point, right? So yes, Mercury is retrograde, so that can cause more delay. So if it isn't a win, then we need to analyze, is it the retrograde that's stopping it? And honestly, I looked at this chart briefly like a week ago and I was like, I'm gonna actually bet money on this. And then I looked at it again and I thought, actually, no. There is quite a few squares and quite a few points of tension I don't like. If he did win, it ain't gonna be an easy win. It isn't gonna be an easy win. But I think it's looking a lot better than it was last week, actually, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, in Silverstone. So that 17 degree, remember 17 degree in astrology is fame and like accolades. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting it all, you know. And again, it's always super sentimental and emotional for him when it's in Cancer. So that's something to really look at. I also really love Venus conjunct the MC, which is what Charles had when he won in Silverstone. This is really beautiful because it brings harmony to what you're well known for in Virgo, all about the analytical nature. So I think that's going to be really beautiful. Those two together, I like a lot. One thing I will say is I do think he will do better in qualifying than he will in the race. So qualifying, he has 20 degree Virgo moon transit, and that is going to be trining his natal Jupiter in the third house of engineering. And that's the placement that's really brought him that champion mentality. I like that trine a lot. I think it's really nice. It's very good for seeing the bigger picture, really getting down with it. He's like not messing about with this at all. So qualifying, I'm not gonna lie, I think I could even be pole position or maybe even in the top 3 for sure. But the actual race does not have that moon trine, so it's not as favorable. Again, we're just testing to see if this is actually going to be affecting him, because I'm intrigued by moon and sun transits for him because they seem to be really powerful. Obviously, Jupiter's present in his 10th house, but that's going to be there for the next year. So it's not going to be something I keep mentioning over and over again, unless there's something really important conjunct or, you know, taking place for him in that regard. There was a few things I wanted to mention that I seem to have forgotten off the top of my head now. Oh, that was it. The sun in Cancer is actually going to be trining Saturn. So remember when we felt like Lewis got quite lucky with the safety car in Barcelona? I'm not saying that's true. I think he did. I think he had the pace already, but I think a lot of people were saying that. I think he himself also said it, because Saturn's all about restriction. And in Silverstone, we had that square from the 10th house to Saturn, which was the safety car. And I really annoyed at myself I didn't spot that before. The reason why that's important is because Saturn's about boundary and constriction. It draws a line. So when I look at Saturn, I'm looking at things like safety car, penalty. He got both, right? Unfortunately, poor boy's got Saturn in his first house. So it's like, oh, we're getting a lot of that on us. The sun trining exactly at 25 degrees. I think this is really nice for, again, maybe something like a penalty or a safety car working in his favor and being quite harmonious. So it's not something I would extremely worry about, but then it just begs the question, is there going to be restriction in place? The thing with astrology is always, if I feel like there's going to be harmony from a safety car, then that says there's a safety car, so there's a crash. Is it Charles? I'm just saying, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you've got to put all the pieces together like a detective. So that trine is nice. And it's also trining the south node as well, which again is restriction. We really need to be looking at the trines and squares to Saturn and the south node. They're both restrictive and they deal with boundary. So those are things are going to be safety car related and penalty related. Okay, there's quite a few things going on. I don't want to mention every single one, but the things that really jump out to me, because I don't want to bore you guys with like all the technical astrology stuff. Although that is important, it's what we do. Mercury retrograde is going to be exactly opposite his sun. I don't love this one personally. Again, it's like a clash between ego. We had something very similar in Silverstone, but it was sort of like roles reversed a little bit. Again, it's sort of like maybe just not happy with the result. Again, I still think he just does better in qualifying than the race, but I do think he's going to I think he's going to do well, right? I always say he's going to do well. I'm very wary of saying he's going to win because I want these videos to be more about these are the things that might take place rather than saying who's going to win. And the reason why I'm going to do less of that is because I do not have every driver's chart. I have an intuition that George is going to do really well this week. So I can't just say Lewis is going to win if I don't have George's chart and he actually wins, right? So what I'm doing is saying I think these people will do well, I think they may crash and may blah blah blah, and then we put it together. Like last time for Silverstone, I was like, I feel like a double Ferrari podium, I'm not gonna lie. So something like that I would be close to saying, but yeah, I'm wary saying the win because I don't like the race as much as qualifying. That's just my sort of opinion. But let's see if that Mercury Moon conjunction does anything. And if it does, well, we've got some proof there, haven't we? Okay. Let's move on to Kimi. my beautiful Kimmy. I'm such a fan of Kimmy now. I'm like, I don't know why, last week I've been like, I love you. I don't know what's going on. Okay, another thing that's very similar to Lewis with qualifying with Kimi is that he has the transit moon in Virgo 20 degrees exactly conjunct his natal moon in Virgo. I like this. I think this is good for emotional precision. It's like keeping everything in check. It's just dotting your I's and crossing your T's, you know, he just knows exactly what he's doing with his qualifying. That's why I'm saying, like, if Lewis doesn't get pole position, I think he'll be up there with Kimi, because I feel like it's more George, Kimi, Lewis in the mix this time. I don't think Charles is in the mix, to be honest. But I do like that moon conjunct moon. Remember, these are two, you know, I say two, but they're one sort of luminary that deals with emotions and feelings. And, you know, in Virgo, it's very like precise. I think Kimi can be emotional, you know, you've seen him sort of a bit tearful, but he's quite sort of like, it is what it is. He's quite sort of chilled and relaxed. So I think that could be nice for being like, bossed it. He has got Venus about 8 degrees away from his midheaven. It's not close enough for me to be like, oh, I like it, like Lewis, for example, but it's still there, and it's something to, you know, something to note. I'm keeping an eye on Uranus for Kimi, because he seems to have problems DNFing with Uranus in the mix as well. So that's something that I've noticed. Honestly, Kimi's chart's amazing. Honestly, again, I'm putting the pitch out there to be his strategic advisor, his spiritual advisor, because about 80% of his chart he could be using for strategic advantage, and he's just not. And I'm like, baby, we could be doing so much more amazing things with this chart, especially because he's so young. It's like you at the prime time to really start strategizing and using this. So yeah, it's interesting to see how it all plays out. I believe it was Austria that he had an issue. He had Venus exactly conjunct his Saturn, which caused problems. So there's things where I'm like looking at it, and really interesting as well, the 17-degree point, which is fame in astrology. And he has a 17-degree Saturn in the 10th house, and Lewis has his 17-degree moon. 17 is really a powerful number of degree in astrology. So it's fascinating to see that. What else do I see? The Mercury retrograde is trining his natal Jupiter, which I think can be quite nice. It's almost like delay that again works in his favor a little bit. I personally feel like that moon is better for qualifying, kind of similar to Lewis. In the race, the moon is not going to be present there. So that's something to know. It's not going to be as victorious, perhaps, or maybe as emotionally in check or regulated. I swear to God, I can hear my neighbours having sex again. Twice in a day. It's so loud. Oh my God, this is so awkward. Anyway, I'm trying to analyze this, and I'm like, oh my God, I can hear the handboard like banging against the wall. Get me out of this hell. So I think that Kimi will do okay, fairly well. I don't think too nasty here. Nothing like the moon transiting Uranus anymore, but I do think it's quite fascinating to see if that natal moon is going to affect qualifying rather than the race again. So that's sort of my analysis. I've looked at Max's chart, and there's nothing of note that I can really talk about, so I'm just not really going to spend a lot of time on it. I do think that Charles will be a lot more aggressive in this race, and I also think that Kimi and Lewis will do fairly well. So I think it's going to be George, Kimi and Lewis in the mix here for this race, and I don't necessarily think Charles will be repeating his harmony or his amazing victory from Silverstone, but let's see how it tracks.